And we are live. Welcome to another episode of Business Focus Live with me, John, where we talk about business related topics as well as news from here and around the world. If you're new to this channel, don't forget to subscribe and let's get started. And we're back. Thank you again for joining me today. So, there's a lot of topics to talk about. So, to start off, we have Apple here. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the brand Apple, but what interesting thing about Apple is, for all the highs and lows that they do, as a company under the stewardship of Tim Cook, Apple has garnered a high recognition or brand loyalty, you know, compared to other brands, especially for the tech industry here. And according to this recent article here at 9 to 5 Mac, Apple brand loyalty commands a very high in terms of 91.19, almost 92%, which goes to show that the company as a whole is doing something right to be able to command such high loyalty from their consumers here. And as mentioned, there was a 91.9% of iPhone owners plan to buy another iPhone when they have an opportunity to upgrade it. So that's slightly higher than the year before, which is 1.4%, which is better than if you compare that to Samsung smartphone owners, which only has a 74% loyalty, which is down from 85%. So meaning in terms of Android users, obviously you have more options here, whether you're using Samsung, Vivo, Oppo, or it used to be Huawei here. And obviously there are several reasons, and let's take a look of what are the main reasons for them to sticking with Apple here. Where is it? There you go. There you go. So as mentioned here, the reasons for sticking with Apple is there are four categories. So 65% like the iPhone better or had never had any issues with it. 21% said they like the lock into ecosystem. So meaning, for Apple to create this ecosystem, whether you're buying the smartphone, the laptop, the desktop, the iPad, all of those things makes a compelling case for sticking with the Apple ecosystem. Then 10% prefer to switch from iOS. Only 10% to switch from iOS to an Android because it's too hassle. Meaning, obviously, if you're from the iOS ecosystem, it makes it difficult to transition. If you switch your smartphone, you have to switch your desktop, your laptop, all of those things. And only 8% prefer to stick to what they know. So, meaning the ecosystem for Apple is a big compelling case or advantage for the company itself. And obviously, for Samsung, despite having being at the bleeding edge of technology in terms of camera and features and so forth, there's just more options for Android users compared for iOS. And here there are three main reasons that was mentioned why iPhone owners who plan to switch to Android. So what could make them switch? Now, only 38% is mentioned here that the other brand has a better technology, meaning better screen, better camera, better battery, or other features that a typical smartphone has. And then only 26.4% prefer the design of other brands. So if you don't like the Apple brand design, you might switch because of that. But they all look premium, if you compare the different brands here. And then for iPhone owners who plan to switch, only 12.9% or 30% prefer the latest model from the other brand that has more features than the latest model, meaning you're already used to their brand. So whether it's a big upgrade or minor upgrade, you'd like to stick with what you know, right? So is it easy for iPhone users to switch as easily? But in my personal experience, my wife used to own an iPhone before, but I convinced her later on that with all the difficulties you have to embed yourself with the ecosystem as mentioned, it makes sense that, if you're going to use, spreadsheet like Microsoft Word and Excel, stands to reason that, using Windows operating system or laptop would be a preferred choice. Anyway, and then we have here that according to Samsung owners, why would they switch to iPhone? Now, almost a third of them says that the Apple offers better privacy protection, which is one of the key features that they're, marketing as mentioned. And a quarter saying that they consider Apple offers better value for money. And according to CellCell, which conducted the survey, as mentioned, they also asked to pick their favorite smartphones uh, from last year to, early this year's release of Samsung's S21 series. So you'll be surprised what are the top 5 or top 8. So let's take a closer look here. Where is it? There you go. So you can see here at the top of the list is you have iPhone 12 as the preferred preferred, brand and model with a 70% preference. Then second is iPhone 12 Pro Max which has a 13% preferences. Only third is the Samsung S21 and not the S21 Ultra, which is kind of surprising. But not far behind, you can see you have the iPhone 12 Pro at 10.6%, and then the Ultra, Samsung Ultra at only 10% here. And you can notice here that, the preference here is for more, preferably iPhone models, iPhone phones, smartphones in a sense. But taking into consideration that obviously this study was made for the US market only, wherein they sampled 5,000 smartphone users. Yes, 5,000 US smartphone users. 2,000 consist of each iPhone and Samsung users here, and the rest is split across two different brands, roughly in line with the market share. So meaning, it might be highly skewed. Obviously, Apple is the dominant market share in the North American region, but go to other regions like in Europe, in Africa, or maybe in Asia, that may be a toss-up between Samsung and Apple here. But again, just goes to show how Apple has created a strong brand recognition in their native region here. Now, whether, more often than not, people would shift from Apple to Samsung or Samsung to Apple, vice versa, it's a case-to-case basis, but obviously Apple is trying their best to ensure that they win out in the end here. Anyway, on the related story, so despite, creating such a high brand recognition for Apple, they always, go into, I won't say uncharted territory, but, they're always embroiled in many controversies, and, it goes to show that, where they say something on one hand, and then based on their action is totally contrary. And one of the case here that, they're very stickler in terms of privacy, and then, bending to governments. But in the case in Russia, here we have an article on Ars Technica. It mentions that Apple bends its rules for Russia in order to, stay in the market here, meaning the iPhone that they release in the market or any other iOS devices sold in Russia, they have to include an extra setup step so that they could include what did they include? Yeah, include apps that is preferred by the Russian government here. So if they were not able to do that, they would be blacklisted in a sense from selling their products in the Russian market here. And obviously, if you're a business here, particularly Apple, if you want to stay in one of the largest market outside of US and China, you want to follow the rules and regulations of any countries that you deal with and so forth. So as mentioned here, so Russia is dedicating, let me see here, is it this one? Yeah, this one. So Russia is dedicating, as mentioned, all computers, smartphones, smart TVs, and so forth that are sold there must be preloaded with selected state-approved applications. So that includes browsers, messenger platforms, and even antivirus services here. So meaning, is it a total invasion of privacy? Not necessarily, because they're only suggesting that the app should be pre-installed, and obviously the user has an option to uninstall it and or not use it either way here. But obviously this comes to the main issue that data privacy in the United States, that they're always stating that they're in for the protection of data privacy or data users. But when you go to a different region or different continent or different market, to say the least, they would do everything to stay in that market at the expense of the consumer protection. And according to Russia, or in Russia, one states that this comes within the context of years and years of mounting regulatory pressure on tech companies. So meaning it's not the first time that they've been under pressure to change certain policies to benefit, obviously the country or the government in this case. And obviously, if 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 Apple wants to stay in that market, they have to follow certain rules. Otherwise, you know, their bottom lines would be significantly hampered here. So obviously they have to find a compromise, a middle ground, so to speak, so that it can be beneficial for both parties, whether for the company as well as for the government themselves. And obviously, the country as a whole, for Russia, has already undertaken a massive effort to reshape its internet's access towards mechanism for control, censorship, and as well as mass surveillance here. And obviously, the government has already imposed significant or increasingly strict regulations on domestic tech companies, such as Apple has mentioned, that they must store their data on local servers and provide security agencies and decryption keys, to say the least, and remove content that violates Russian law here now. And obviously, companies don't have to do all of it, but up to a certain point, if they don't follow the requests or requirements of certain governments, they might not stay long in that region anyway. Now, they're calling this pre-installed app law to be known as the law against Apple. Now, obviously, this is a way to test if Apple will follow suit or they would, go against the grain, so to speak. And obviously, the point of the matter of what the Russian government is trying to implement here is to create an opportunity, to promote apps that the country can surveil and control, while also allowing the government to manipulate the tech market. Now, obviously, that's a more shady area in terms of political will and preferences. But at the end of the day, as a company, if you're Apple, what do? You're left in the middle to sort the issue, and if you don't appease the government, you might stay there long. But if you do that, you'll offend the consumers who buys your product at the end of the day. So obviously, if they don't follow, the law will penalize and fine, which is surprising, the vendor who sells or non-compliant computers and smartphones rather than the manufacturer, which is kind of ironic, because obviously the manufacturers has the prerogative or the option to pre-install the apps as mentioned rather than go to the option. But obviously it's a way for them to appease the government per se. And this is not only the isolated issue that arises from a government dictating the terms of how a company should market their products. You also have China, where they agreed to use domestic cloud services to store its Chinese customers' iCloud data and encryption keys. And Apple removes apps from its Chinese iOS App Store when the government demands it. So meaning, if they were to say remove, let's say, Facebook, which they do, they don't have Facebook there, or even Instagram, WhatsApp, all of those social media apps, so that the government can monitor the activities of their citizens here. Now, obviously, from both an economic and national security standpoint, it's understandable to a degree that governments would want to promote domestic software to their own citizens. But in reality, that may somewhat, somewhat shady, because it erodes the internet freedom that every one of us has been accustomed with. So that's the gray area that they have to settle with. But either way, at the end of the day, as a company, what should they do? And obviously, as a company here, they could always not follow what the government is do, but promote what do you call this? Promote the apps that they prefer to be installed here, and help consumers, make it easier for them to have a better experience, other than limit or remove certain apps that users can use in the long run here. In the end, Apple could have simply allowed Russia to pre-install whatever apps it wanted, but instead they found a middle ground so that they could still stay in the market and appease the government as a whole here. But obviously, you know, if government keeps on pushing their agenda here, up to what point can a company will stay in their, stay with their principles and so forth? And it's not just, China or Russia that we're dealing with here. On the other hand, Apple was fined in Brazil for, removing their charges from their iPhone 12 box, right? They stated that they're removing the charger from the box if you bought a new smartphone because of environmental reasons, which is total load of bollocks if you think about it, since you have to use their proprietary cable, or if it's an iPhone, but if you're using their laptops, you have to use a USB type C, which is kind of ironic. Why not standardize the cable so that it's easier for consumers to transfer their files from one device to the other? Obviously, they made it so that you have to buy extra the accessories, whether it's a data cable or even your charging brick here. And I think other governments should see or follow suit as to what Brazil is doing here. That it used to be when you pay for a product, all the accessories would be given to you. Well, not necessarily all of it. You had the headphones, then you had the charging brick. Used to be, right? Then now they don't even give you the headphones. You have to buy it separately. And then you don't even have the option to buy the headphones that can be plugged into your device. Obviously, they want to promote the Bluetooth device, which I'm okay with it, but you still like to have that option where at the end of the day, if let's say you ran out of the battery, you can still plug in your headphones directly to your to your mobile phones, right? And then charge your phone with your own charging brick, rather than worry, should I buy one? How much is it going to cost me, and so forth. And hopefully it's not just Brazil who's going to look at this as an opportunity that is Apple going too far, and would this have an effect towards their brand loyalty? Well, so far based on the data, it hasn't slowed down one bit. Well, at least for the Northern American region, but I'm assuming that in other regions that's not the case here. But so Apple has has a long task ahead of them. Anyway, continuing. So speaking of Google, now many companies have been trying to adopt a work from home setup wherein you don't have to go to your workplace anymore, going to your office, unless certain type of job or role wherein you have to be physically present in your offices so you can talk to your clients, to your co-workers, and so forth. Now, in the case of Google, they've been going to invest heavily in terms of the sum of $7 billion in their real estate plans. So they're not betting that the work from home strategy is going to be a long-term strategy, but I think it would be a hybrid mixed strategy, in my opinion anyway. So meaning they're investing more, not just in their main offices where their state, I think their headquarters, is it in California or in San Francisco? I can't remember. So meaning they're going to expand based on the situation that is provided here. Meaning, everyone is working at home. Can't have a culture if people are, are staying at their own separate houses, right? So how can you have a cohesive working unit in an organization if you're not together? So no amount of Zoom is going to get that same result, right? So I think Google is betting that if people can go back, everyone in one specific location, but spread out, nationwide, or whether in the United States or in Asia or in Europe, people still need to be engaged or get in contact with one another, maybe in a smaller group. So that's why they may be planning on investing a substantial amount in real estate plans here. So according to the CEO, as mentioned from Sundar Pichai, they're mentioning, So they're investing 7 billion in offices and data centers this year across all 19 states, across 19 states here. So the plan is to include over 1 billion embark for California and the expansion offices of Atlanta, Chicago, New York, as well as other smaller cities here. So obviously to bolster the data center and enable online search here. Now, obviously, Google has big business, not just the online component. They have other services that they need to manage despite the pandemic that's going on. So Google has reportedly nixed the permanent work from home model, meaning, it may work for last year, but for the foreseeable future, it's going to be a different scenario here. So let's take a closer look here. Yes. So obviously some in-person collaboration remains critical to productivity. So again, so not every businesses, I think all business should not be working from home, right? But how do you find the balance here? Obviously, some regions, some countries are still dealing with the pandemic, like in our case. So cases have been rising. So requiring people to go to their offices right away may be counterproductive because you put your employees at risk here, which we don't want to happen. But in the case in the United States, some have already eased their lockdowns and allowing their people to go back to their offices, and with the vaccines along the way, especially in the United States, so people are more comfortable going to the office. But is it going to be a full transition back to the offices? Maybe not, because obviously once patterns have shifted over a course of a year or so, people would always like to have the flexibility option, whether do I have to go back to the office every day or maybe just every other day would be preferred here. And as mentioned, according to the article here at Forbes.com, the company, as mentioned, has pledged in the amount of $1 billion to advance sustainable housing in the San Francisco area. So meaning they're hedging their bets that, once people come back, and when they do come back, it's not a matter of if, but when, that people would go back to their work. And in terms of work, do they go to the offices? What type of interaction? Obviously, that's what Google is looking here, or according to the CEO there. So question here is, will other companies adopt the same strategy in terms of, working from home indefinitely, or will they shift back to the traditional way of, going back to the office every day and so forth, or is it somewhere in between here? Well, as for Google anyway, they're continuing as mentioned. So they're looking, in some places, the future will look much more like the past here. Now, what the past is it working in the office like before, or is it a mix already, or a totally different experience altogether? And, on the related story, speaking of tech firms, as mentioned, Silicon Valley firms is in no hurry to open up offices despite easing of virus ban, as mentioned. So in the case of Google, obviously they're thinking long term in terms of companies resuming their offices or opening their offices again. But for companies such as Twitter and Google, they plan to keep their offices closed for the immediate future. So not indefinitely, but right now, as of this year, maybe a few months from now. And obviously, despite the declining coronavirus infections in the United States here. Now, obviously, companies committed last year to allow workers to stay at home until summer, or some said indefinitely. I think Facebook mentioned that, said that they stood by their timeline. So let's see here if that has changed. Where is it? There you go. So let's see here. So you have companies like Cisco's Systems Inc., who is a networking gear maker, and Dropbox Inc., the file storage services. Their mandatory work from home policy would remain in effect until later this June. Then you have Box Inc. reopening their offices sometime later in September, so later this year. You also have Pinterest eyeing reopening at the very least, or earliest is around August. Then obviously you have Google slating for reopening at the earliest around September. Then you have DocuSign not before October. So meaning they're still delaying, waiting out, seeing how it goes. If cases would rise up, is it, are people comfortable? That's the problem. Even if Google is investing in real estate, but at the end of the day, if people are not comfortable, they don't feel safe, why risk it in going out, right? So it's not just those companies. You also have Twitter, Adobe Inc., PayPal Holdings, Twilio, Yelp, Zoom Video Communications are also staying closed until further notice, despite the government has already shifted from the to the orange tier from red tier lockdown restrictions in California. So again, at the end of the day, people are still concerned regarding what they call this. Let me see. There you go. Screen is blocking the view. There you go. Anyway, so as mentioned, so despite the easing of lockdowns and government saying that's it's much safer now than compared before, but still people are big business are still afraid, or not afraid, concerned that with one miscalculation and sudden spike, or whether it's a second wave, third wave of rise of cases, could blow up in the faces of those decision makers here, whether in the company or in the government themselves. So but they could manage that as a big company, right? But obviously, according to a spokesperson here, San Francisco official, they expect smaller and mid-sized companies or mid-sized tiered companies to first to return. Obviously, they cannot sustain a long period of shutdown. Same here in our country here, that with the easing of lockdowns, the assumption that the vaccine is coming in the very near future, I think we're all being complacent in a sense, that thinking that once the virus comes, that the virus will not spread anymore. But from the time it arrives to the time people are majority of the population is vaccinated, it's going to take a long time. It could take weeks, months, or even a year. But by then, if the cases keep piling up, which we'll be talking about it in a little bit, it's going to be concerning. And we cannot afford another major shutdown in our economy here. So what can the government do? What should businesses do for the meantime? Obviously, once the government mandates the shutdown, there's nothing else businesses can do here but to follow suit here. Well, hopefully we're looking for some better days here. Hopefully, sooner rather than later. Anyway, for some sports, now we mentioned that the NFL is finalizing finally a new deal, TV rights with the several TV networks in the United States. And what's surprising here, Amazon is in the picture here. Now, we talked about it weeks back, I think, a few weeks back. We're in ABC. You have ABC, which is owned by Disney Company. You have CBS, which is owned by Viacom. You have Fox. You have NBC, are the primary TV rights holder for airing NFL games. So, and then this article mentions that Amazon has already been part of the main TV networks who's going to showcase NFL games in 2023, which is kind of interesting. The deal for the TV network for the 11-year rights deal is going to be in the north of 100 billion, meaning the NFL games, the National Football League games, is still one of the most popular games in the United States, and some may say in the world, simply because there are a lot of people eyeballing the games every week, week in and week out. Whether it's a Monday Night Football, Sunday Night Football, or even a Thursday Night Football, people are still watching it, across different age group here. Now, obviously, if you're a TV network, you want to have a piece of that action, so that if there's a lot of people watching, you can generate a lot of commercials, advertisement, generate a lot of revenue here. And it was talked about that those companies were complaining, especially for Disney, that they have to pay almost twice what they paid before. So right now, this is going to pay in the north, in the amount of almost 3 billion, 2.7 billion, compared to just, I think, less than a little over a billion last time. I think right now, before it expires in 2023. Then you have CBS, Fox, and NBC are paying a little over 2 billion a year for the 11 packages here. Now for Disney, they own two networks. You have ABC, which is a local network. Then you have ESPN. So it showcases all sports there. Now, what's interesting here is obviously this is going to pay more because they have not only the two networks that are going to showcase show the games, but they have exclusivity in terms of international game each year. So let's see here. There you go. So as mentioned, they're going to air international game each year. Not only that, they get to keep the Monday night schedule, the Monday night football package. So they also have the rights to air two Super Bowls on its ABC network. So for those who are not familiar, Super Bowl is a very big thing. It's the championship already for NFL, and based on the data that was presented last time, the last Super Bowl wherein Tampa Bay Buccaneers won the championship. Almost 100 million of people were watching it. Now, obviously, it's the key demographic they're looking for. They're looking for the young audience from the 19 to 48, I think the age group has been declining, but despite that, there's still a lot of people watching it. So, TV networks are still sharing out millions, or in this case, billions of dollars, just to be able to retain the rights and, take advantage of those eyeballs watching the games every week. And not only that, for ABC or even ESPN, Disney, the company which owns them, can stream all of the NFL games on their local network. So you have ABC, ESPN, and even ESPN Plus here. So it's going to be interesting, for the next decade. Can the National Basketball Association reach the level of how the NFL has reached their stature right now in terms of popularity, profitability, and so forth, despite, all the politic issues or issues from players, from difficulties that they've encountered from the commissioner himself, Roger Goodell here. Now, he stated that the news media deal will provide our fans even greater access to the games they love. So obviously, the commissioner must be doing something right to be able to not just manage all of the teams, especially in particular last year's tumultuous year, and being able to get this new deal right away and give back to their owners, all 30 owners, I think, in the United States, in the NFL teams there. Now, according to the senior VP of Prime Video and Amazon Studios, which is now going to own the slate for the Thursday night football, so NFL games are the most watched live programming in the United States, according to him. So this unprecedented Thursday night football packages give us tens of millions of new and existing Prime members exclusive access to must-watch live football on Prime now. Obviously, it is a key strategy for Amazon for going this route. So why would Amazon buy a slot in NFL games here? Obviously, they already have a slew of Prime subscribers. Now, watching NFL games would be a bonus, but I think what they're trying to do here is entice other viewers who are not subscribed to Amazon to subscribe to their services, and I'm sure they would be able to do that, since not only are you watching, you can also buy products in Amazon in their platform as well here. Now, obviously, or was it? You can see here. Where was I? There you go. And according to the schedule here, now there's a rotation for the Super Bowl rotation. Who's going to where is it going to be aired, which TV station? Now it's going to rotate starting from 2023 all the way to 2033. So it's still a few years away before the new deal kicks in. So CBS will start, Fox will be next, NBC is next, then ESPN, or in this case ABC, will air the Super Bowl, then goes back to CBS, Fox, NBC, and all the way back to ABC. Now, just to give you an idea, as I mentioned, I think I mentioned already. So early this year, the Super Bowl, wherein the Tampa Bay defeated the Kansas City Chiefs, attracted almost 100 million viewers. So that's a big number, right? Despite having the lowest watch Super Bowl in terms of the age demographic, the young teens or adults that they're trying to target, but still, it's a lot of people. That's why in terms of the halftime football show, during the halftime break, during the Super Bowl, a lot of advertisers are paying top billing to be able to showcase their product, because they know there are millions and millions of people watching their their TV show, in this case, going to watch your commercial. So paying millions, is it worth it? Is it a high price amount? Yes, it is. And what's interesting, for those who are not familiar, especially those who perform during the halftime, they're not paid. Those performers are not paid a single dollar, because the thinking here is it's giving you a platform for people to see you, especially if you're an unknown commodity, or in this case performer. And if people would see you, 100 million people see you perform live, it's going to be beneficial for you, not the other way around. Why should the NFL league pay the performer? It's the other way around. It's just to give you a physical presence, in a sense, right? Michael Jackson used to perform. You have Janet Jackson used to perform. Several actually. I didn't know who was the performer last time. I saw the performance, but I wasn't familiar who was the singer at the time. But anyway, so it remains to be seen that will it be a beneficial partnership for both the NFL league as well as the TV networks here. Well, they're betting there is, right? Anyway, continuing with sports. Now, Nike is a very popular brand in terms of sports apparel and gear and so forth, right? Now, caught my attention now in the article in Forbes.com, wherein they created the first fully hands-free shoe. Now, obviously, hands-free shoe is not new in terms of concept, wherein you don't have to put any effort in terms of wearing a shoe. Now, some may say it's becoming lazy if people are, becoming more lazy if they cannot even lace up their shoe. Now, obviously, there's a small segment of a market, especially for handicapped people or amputee people that, don't have the luxury of, for everyone that has, hands, fingers to maneuver with, which we typically take it for granted. But for those disabled or with limitations, would benefit from this hands-free feature from a shoe, right? Imagine you don't have to lace a shoe, you just put in your feet or your sole or feet inside the shoe, and then it would lock automatically, and then you could do whatever activity that you desire, whether running or playing sports and so forth. Now, this has been already implemented before, but I think this is the first one that makes sense, in a sense. They're calling it the first fully hands-free shoe, as mentioned. So it's making it easier or accessible for people with disability, as mentioned. So let's see here. Hey, where is it? There you go. I found it. So you can see here. So it's a regular shoe, as you notice, but there are slight nuances or differences in terms of the bistable hinge. So that's the hinge here at the end here. So rather than you have to pull it and then put your feet inside the shoe, you can put it entirely hands-free. So it will open up when you put your feet, and then by the time you plant your feet on the sole, then it would lock it at the end. So makes it easier here. So the bistable hinge, as mentioned, is the key here. So transitioning from open or ready position to closed or set position simply by stepping in and down on the footbed here. So it just goes to show, Nike is always looking for ways to improve better experience of footwear here. Now, according to Sarah Reinersten, the project designer lead, they wanted to keep on creating new and different ideas. I think it's not necessarily new, but obviously it's an important milestone that being able to simplify the shoe. I think they also created the shoe that was shown in the Back to the Future. It looks futuristic, wherein you put in your feet and then it would lock automatically and so forth. Kind of futuristic, something like that. But obviously this is more for everyday practical use here. So they mentioned that if they could create something that you didn't need hands to get in and out, obviously it could unlock those benefits for everyone, especially those who have limitation in terms of using their hands and so forth. So doing this, or a laceless upper that they call it, which features a mesh construction, includes tensioner band wrapping the outside of a shoe to help keep the foot locked in when wearers are on the go. So I'm looking forward to see this in the market. If it makes sense, is it comfortable? Is it fashionable? Obviously, at the end of the day, the aesthetics is always important, right? Apart from the application itself. So the hands-free comes as a lifestyle offering for Nike, as mentioned. So for everyday activity, even if is not meant for high performance design here, and obviously gives you more options for people, who have limitations of wearing shoes rather than slip-on shoes or like Crocs, slip-on shoes and so forth. So obviously putting a hinge here is somewhat tricky, and obviously investing in research and development, bears fruit here. Hopefully, it would sell well for the company. So the piece of engineering, that was the tricky part, to figure out the hinge themselves, right? So at the end of the day, it was made of rubber, stiffer than a typical outsole, stayed open and closed as needed, all without any feeling of the hinge underfoot. Obviously, if it's not comfortable, you will not wear it over long periods of time, or you wear it over and over again. So using it for everyday use is a key part here. And obviously now Nike has launched it's called the Go Fly Ease. So it has 3 colorways, and it's already been released since last month, and it's roughly around $120. So somewhat expensive, yeah, more or less, in terms of Nike shoes here. So if you're interested, you can check it out their website and go purchase one online here. Anyway, next we have here is, are you familiar with the popular I Am a Mac commercial wherein Justin Long was promoting the Mac? It's a better computer compared to a PC and so forth. I'm a Mac guy versus a PC guy. Well, the roles are reversed now. Intel has brought in Justin Long to promote the PC users of its benefits, and so in a sense mocking Mac users here. So the first one they mentioned is the 2-in-1. So I'll show that in a bit. Then the other one, it showcased that that a laptop for Mac is not a gaming laptop, so it's not ideal in a sense. So let's see here. Or was it? There you go. So as mentioned, so the 2-in-1 option for any PC or Windows user, it's one of the key features. So you can flip it to a 2-in-1, to a laptop, to a tablet, and so forth. But obviously a MacBook cannot do that, right? Now whether that's bad, who's to say? Obviously it depends on the user. Now I prefer for a regular experience in terms of laptop. Typical clamshell is sufficient for me. Do I need that fancy flip type? Maybe your designer, that makes sense, but for majority of users, would you even use that feature and so forth? And in terms of the mocking Mac for not being able to play games there, obviously if you buy a Mac, you're not there to play games, right? It's either for work related purposes, or you're doing it for school and so forth, right? And if you really want to play games, there's always an option of buying console games and whatnot, right? So let's see here. I think, yeah, it has a commercial here. Let's see here.
Hello, I'm just a real person doing a real comparison
here you
between
see
Mac
Justin
and
Long.
PC, between Mac and PC. Come on.
Years
So
later,
you're a
to
PC
comparing
gamer?
the two laptops here,
tablet.
you
You're doing all this gaming on a laptop.
should they even be focusing on mocking or featuring the benefits of a
laptop?
It's
It's
PC user compared to a Mac user and so forth?
I know. And a keypad.
I think this is a bad strategy, but in terms of generating generating hype and controversy, I think they've done a great job for that one, right? And obviously here's another one. So let's see here. So you can see here that another one, it's in terms of
Just a real person doing
having
a real comparison
choices,
between Mac
the
and PC.
gaming PC
Come on.
per se,
These are all
that
PCs.
that
Intel.
Apple does not have any option. I think
Whoa, my
it's a
face
plus
just
for the
unlocked up.
company,
That's so cool.
for
I've never
Apple,
seen a
because
screen like this
you
before on a
don't
laptop. Wow.
you will not
And
get
let's see
easily
over
be
here.
confused in terms of if you're trying to buy
So
a
these are the
MacBook.
newer Macs?
Is it the MacBook Air,
Okay,
MacBook Pro,
so
and then that's it.
Gray
Right?
in
easier choice for consumers rather than if you're, if you're a PC buyer, or do I buy a Dell computer? Do I buy a Asus? Or, you're looking for specs. Obviously, the advantage of the Windows is you can spec up your laptop, and in its upgradability compared to MacBook. But at the end of the day, obviously they have different target customers, whether you're a Mac user versus a PC user, or PC user as mentioned. And finally, and at the end of the day, it creates the identity politics that they're trying to convey here. It's either you're a Mac user or PC user, but you could use either way, right? As long as it provides a better feature that, I think Intel should have focused on their advantages rather than, trying to pit themselves with another company, which doesn't bode well. And I think it's understandable since, on their own home front, if you're a PC user, you're not only looking at Intel as an viable option for, setting up a new computer or desktop. You're looking at AMD now, which is on their heels, right? So they should be very nervous. Not only that, it used to be that Apple was using Intel chipset or, processor, but with all the delays, with, I think, complacency came in. Could be. Now Apple decided they wanted to create their own processor, so leave, in this case, Intel behind. So in two fronts, Intel's not doing so well. Now, obviously, Intel's still a big company. They have the resources to improve what they're standing right now is, but obviously competition has caught up or trying to overtake their positioning in their marketplace. Now, is this the right path for the company? Well, only time can tell here, especially for the consumer audience here. If they're trying to create controversy here, I think they've done a great job. But in terms of increasing their brand awareness, their popularity, they're not doing themselves any favor here. Anyway, for some local news, now we were mentioning about businesses working from, shutting down when the cases are going higher and higher, and this is what's happening here, especially here in the metro here. According to Rappler.com, over 7,000 cases of COVID-19 cases is considered the highest since the pandemic, began last year. So meaning, what's the government been doing all this time? Meaning, are the protocols, the measures that they have put in place, has it been effective? Now, obviously, I try to stay away from politics, but if this affects businesses, obviously, businesses suffer. If it's shut down, people's livelihood are affected, not just the owners, business partners, but also the employees that work for them. How do you support your families if you're not working, and so forth? And just like what the government or sort of lockdown, soft lockdown, they did not shut down the major essential businesses, buying food and so forth. But for everything else, they have to shut down. Actually, based on my personal experience, last week I went to the mall to buy some groceries for the family. So it looks like what it used to be last year when we reopened, where businesses are not yet, open. And obviously, a business can only handle so much opening, and closing again. And, is this a good strategy from the government? We're thinking that, the vaccine is coming soon, but not soon enough, right? And if we wait that long, we are assuming that the vaccine is the ultimate solution. But for the meantime, if we don't address the immediate problem that we're dealing with, it's going to even cause more problems than necessary. And, we'll be left behind in terms of the economy. And, we'll talk about how the financial segment is doing here with regards to the Bangko Sentral. What are they doing? But obviously, one institution or one segment of the institution can only do so much. The government has to use all of its, clout in all industries or in their power to ensure that businesses can get back on its feet and help our citizens go back on their feet and, get back to some normalcy here. Anyway, so as mentioned, the cases have been rising, which was alarming when this was earlier reported, right? And you can see here. So it's now 7,103 cases. The single highest daily tally ever since the pandemic. Now, there's a confirmed case of almost 650,000. So that's a very high amount. right? And obviously, with the cases increasing, the chances of burdening our healthcare is not it's not boding well. And not only that, according to the Philippine Daily Positivity Rate, which states the percentage of all COVID-19 tests performed are actually an all-time high at 15%. And according to World Health Organization, the recommendation here for the positivity rate, as mentioned, should be below 5%. So we're already 3 times higher than the recommended by the WHO. So meaning we're not doing a great job here. So meaning we really need to take a look at what's the root cause here. What's causing the sudden rise of cases again? Is it the controls that putting in place not working? Maybe we need to revise it, improve it. But either way, we need to find an immediate solution rather than let it fester and let it grow. Obviously, according to the Okta Research Group, they stated that they've already raised the alarm to serious surge of COVID-19 cases in the metro here. And if that were the case, or in this case, when the reproduction number, or R, is right now at 1.96 or almost 2. And the goal here is to keep it at below 1. So it's twice the level that we have right now. So the containment of virus is critical, but waiting for the vaccine is a long tall order. Getting the number of vaccines necessary, and it's going to cost citizens here. And obviously this has going to be a significant impact in our healthcare. As mentioned, right now 6 out of 10 beds in Metro Manila is filled up with the ICUs, which is we can only accommodate so much. And if we reach the threshold, and if it goes over beyond a certain point, then we cannot accommodate everyone else. And where would people go? They'll be stuck at home. They'll spread the virus, which is not good. It's not good for everyone, not good for the families, for the community, and everyone else, right? So, do we need drastic measures? Hopefully not locking down everything, because it did not work last time. We locked down, we missed the opportunity there. And obviously this could threaten and cripple the health system, in any nation, especially ours. So with our limited resources, we have to make do. Now, continuing this topic now, obviously the rise cases has hampered the growth of businesses here, and according to the Bangko Sentral of the Philippines, or BSP, they've kept the interest rate at a very low rate. Now, despite inflation is skyrocketing right now. Obviously, the goal or the role of the BSP or the Bangko Sentral is to maintain the financial stability of the economy here, whether to increase rates or reduce the rates here, so that if it's at the interests are low, businesses would be encouraged to borrow money to grow their business and so forth, and that would jumpstart the economy. But obviously that's not working. And given with the data that we have here, the rates are at an all-time low, and it can only go higher, which means inflation will be higher right now. And if we were to maintain this, would this jumpstart our economy? Now, obviously, the financial institution like the BSP can only do so much. We have to look at other aspects, other areas to stimulate business. Obviously, ensuring that the containment of the virus is one, and next is how do we help the big businesses as well as the small businesses flourish in terms of this difficult time, because as time passes by, more and more businesses will be shut down, which is not good for the economy, right? Because our country is dependent on businesses supplementing jobs, supplementing income to provide for your employees as well as for your families as well. So let's see here. Where was it? Yeah, there you go. Yeah, as mentioned here, so according to the BSP Monetary Board, the overnight borrowing rate is at 2%. So it's still low, while the corresponding lending rate has stayed at 2.5%. So keeping interest rates low to inject liquidity in the financial system is important to support the economy, which is reasonable, but at the cost of the rise of inflation. Now, if you think inflation is not important, meaning the rise of cost of wages, fuel, and so forth, years back when I was younger, the fare to travel from one location to another at minimum it only cost a buck or a buck 50. Now, you have to spend at minimum maybe $10 or even more just to, take a short trip here. And that's how critical, inflation does to, our economy here. Is this good? If businesses is booming, but like in our case, businesses are shut down right now and it's not helping any cause. So why would businesses borrow money? Borrowing money to just for the sake of borrowing money doesn't make sense. There has to be an end goal here, whether the companies are seeing that the easing of the lockdown, they're seeing the cases slowing down, meaning you know people are contained in terms of the spread of the virus so that people could go back to their normal lives. Now, what that normal life looks like, who's to know, right? But and it's still a long ways to go. And as for the government, the governor of BSP, Governor Benjamin Diokno, stated keeping interest rate low is important, as mentioned, to support the economy. He also stated that he will continue to accommodate price spikes to support the economy and will likely hit a long pause on monetary policy, which is, they can only do so much, right? I think we can see here the lending rate here. How low is it right now? Let's see. Yes, you can clearly see here, right? According to the chart. So it's been holding steadily for the past few years at around 10 to 20%, right? But with what happened, last year here, you can see actually even before the pandemic, you can see there's a steady decrease of the interest rate here. Then they tried to increase it, before the lockdown, and then it crashed. It's right now negative 2.5%. So, how to encourage lending money, even though it's dirt cheap now to borrow money from the bank, and obviously from the banks themselves. Why would they lend money if they know businesses cannot, repay their debt? So, it's a double-edged sword that's difficult to manage and imagine what would one do if you're a bank or as a business either way. That's why lending activities remains to be weak according to BSP as mentioned. So because of the prevailing uncertainty in the economy, obviously, there has been much longer lag in the decision of monetary policy on credit activity. Unless the government can do something about how to stabilize our economy in terms of managing the virus, it's going to be an uphill battle. And obviously banks are still reluctant to lend, and businesses or even the public are hesitant to borrow either way. So meaning no one's borrowing, no one's lending. At the end of the day, money is not moving around, right? So President Duterte, we need a solution in the immediate future. Hopefully they're working on one right now. So the key here is how do you encourage bank lending? Either government has to push for leniency, maybe not just a low interest rate, but for those who are in debt right now, forgiveness rate or something like that to encourage businesses to borrow from the bank. Because the only way that we see it is BSP can only increase the interest rate, which is not good for businesses. So whether to take advantage now or later, it's up to them. And obviously, the inflation is always at the back of our minds, whether the increase in wage or transport fare adjustments, obviously is going to be costly for every citizen here. Anyway, for some final stories, something interesting I saw. I was watching the Lou Later podcast a week ago, and I saw him discussing something interesting. Now, I used to think that a device that is gold plated is somewhat expensive. I didn't realize how expensive one could be until I saw this one. So a gold iPhone can be expensive compared to a regular iPhone, right? But what surprised me is the other products that they're selling here. So let me show you this. I saw this. So they not only sell iPhones, they also other products from iPad, Apple Watch, and so forth. But you will be astonished how much it costs to buy one of those. Obviously, much more expensive than a regular device here. So Let me show you here. So here we are caviar.com. So Caviar is a luxury store. Obviously, from the name itself, caviar, one of the most expensive items that you could buy. You know, it's a delicacy. It's very rare. That's why it's expensive. The rarer an item, obviously, the more expensive here. So you can see here that they're showcasing different products here. Now, what caught my attention is not the iPhone. Now, look at the price here. It's costing around $5,000. So it's not cheap. So 5,000, you know, how much is that in peso? 250,000. So, and you can see here the iPods, they have sneakers. You know, that's not what caught my attention. Now, I thought, you know, there's such thing as too much. But, you know, looking at their catalog, you can see you have iPhone, you have other products. But what caught my attention is this one, the PlayStation 5, right? It's gold plated. Now, you might say, sir, that's not expensive. It costs $5,000, 6,000. No. If we were to take a closer look, the gold plated is much more expensive. And how expensive? Take a closer look here. So a Sony PlayStation 5, the golden wrap, is costing around $400,000. And it's much cheaper to buy a carbon fibered Sony PlayStation. This is what excess would look like, right? You thought buying a expensive sports car expensive. Buying a gold-plated PlayStation 5 is, you know, the ultimate expensive here. Since you can't bring it anywhere, and, you know, people could steal it if you just leave it at home. You know, this is what you call excess at its apex, right? And you know, doing the research here in their website, the PlayStation 5 console here is the most expensive item that you could buy here. So you could check it out if you're interested. They have several products here. It's not just the Caviar company that sells those products. There are others that I was surprised to see that are offering, you know, luxury items, gold-plated and whatnot. So you can see here, tablets, gaming consoles, smartphone devices, all of those. So to your heart's contents. And, you know, and then it got me interested to look at other aspects of how extravagant you can convert your regular PS5. And to my surprise, I was able to find something interesting, not expensive, but, you know, something different altogether, which is, you know, obviously a regular PS5 is, you know, it's plasticky, right? The case, the cover itself is made out of plastic. Now, I saw a video from DIY Perks, which I'll show you in a bit. He converted the external coverings by using brass, which is look astonishing. I think much better than putting gold plated here. So you could, you know, showcase it as a display piece and so forth. So let me show you. So here's his video. So you can check out his website, DIY Perks, if you're interested. Anyway, so he used this PS5 to create a something, you know, extraordinary. Now, taking note, he mentions here that, you know, the curvature of the PlayStation is difficult to curve out, especially if you're using bronze as a material to, you know, replicate the casing here. So let's see here what he did here. So he took apart, so used a sheet of brass, try to replicate the externals here. So it's a difficult process here, and as mentioned here in his title, and he was able to replicate here. So this is the centerpiece. So he was able to bend it. Now the difficult part here is, you know, the buttons, which able to do. And then not only that, he was going to create the side panel, so to speak. So that's the key part. So how do you bend it so that it looks nice? And it took him some time to be able to do this, some trial and error. So he was heating it up so it would follow the curvature of the shape. And, you know, to my astonishment, once he did it, he reassembled it. It looks tremendous. So putting in the pins here, so let me skip here. So you can see here, he put in the pins here so he can put it back together, doing some polishing afterwards. And ta-da! So let me skip here. So it looks premium. It looks nice. Now, I don't know how is this going to work in terms of heat, right? Dissipation. So, it looks great. This looks like an art piece that you'd like to display it at your house. Obviously, this one is a working console here. So, looks great. So, this is the finished model. Now, I've seen other people try to do something more elaborate in a sense here. Sorry.
Nature of the brass, combined with the
So
delicate
something
curves
less
of the original
elaborate
design,
in terms
refined the
of
aesthetic far
what did
beyond
they
what I
do?
could have hoped for,
Water cooling it,
resulting
which is
in what
a
is
different
perhaps
experience, so
one
you
of the
can
most
check it out.
stunning
But
concepts.
anyway, so for for those enthusiasts, do you want to spend tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars for an upgraded version of your PlayStation? Go right ahead. And if you want something more fancy or less fancier, less costly, putting brass would be another interesting thought here. Well, one can only wish. Anyway, I think that's it for now. Thank you for joining me again. So if you have any questions today, feel free to leave your comments down below and I'll try to get back to you. As always, I leave the link in the description in all the topics that I've discussed today. So as always, thanks for watching. I'll see you again next week, same time, same channel. Take care.